When a major event happens in the world, we turn to the news to give us all of the information so that we can have all of the facts. But when the media starts to conceal the truth or manipulate parts of it, it can be hard to trust or believe what they are telling us. Whether it's intentionally or accidentally done, this is referred to as media bias. But what are the consequences of media bias and what impact does it have on us as a society? Hi, I'm Rizwana and welcome to the Sociology Corner. Today's video will assess the sociological impact of media bias on Palestine and how we can combat media bias. Palestine and Israel have been ruling the news cycle for almost a year, and it has been argued that the media has been extremely biased against pro Palestinians and Palestine. But how so? Before we take a look at anything, we have to look at the definition of media bias. Media bias can be defined as an unjust favoritism and reporting of certain ideas or standpoint. There are many kinds of media bias, and this video will highlight a few of them, which I will reference from this paper by Gaines, Albanos, and Plaza. But why is media bias relevant to sociology? There are many impacts of media bias, as the media is a citizen's primary source of information, so it can lead to things like group polarization, political segregation, and collective decision making. Take a look at this idea here: selective exposure. Media bias plays into selective exposure, which involves the theory of cognitive dissonance, where people seek means to rationalize their beliefs by avoiding information that clashes with their existing views and only focusing on media that entertains their existing opinions. This is related to the confirmation concept of confirmation bias. Due to their beliefs being continually confirmed by both their news sources and the people around them, their views will never be challenged. This leads to a breakdown in productive discussion. Some may ask, why is this relevant to sociology? Well, sociology is all about society and how society functions, so the theory of selective exposure has actually had huge impacts on us. Something unrelated to media bias but related to selective exposure was a theory conducted in 2010 by Fisher and Grettemeyer. It found that confirmatory information search was responsible for the 2008 bankruptcy of the Lehman Brothers after financial advisors ignored the mathematical evidence that foretold the housing market crash due to favoring the status quo being shared by their inner circle. As a result of ignoring the math and only listening to their yes men, it led to an entire market crash. Media bias also means that when debates do arise, the facts aren't as they have been presented, which makes it difficult to see the truth or what the right side of the debate is. This is exemplified by the amount of misinformation circulating online around Palestine, a lot of it being at the hands of Western media. 40 babies were reported as being unalived with no heads, and a journalist had claimed that she had seen it firsthand. However, soon after she had changed her story to say that she had heard it from soldiers who had seen this happen firsthand. However, there has never been any evidence of this claim, and even Israeli news and media have reported that there had never been of any indication of this event happening. Due to the sensation of the claim and the claim involving babies, something to elicit a far more emotional response, it spread like wildfire online, and even US President Joe Biden claimed that he had seen videos and pictures of these babies, a claim that was quickly retracted by the White House correspondent seconds later. However, it was too late. The damage had been done. This relates to the notion of spin bias, a type of bias where the journalist tries to create a memorable story. The journalist may try to do this by using loaded emotional language, exaggerate or select only certain facts that fit the story in order to make it more interesting. The impact of spin bias is that it can distort the reality of a situation and lead to the spread of misinformation. By mentioning babies, it's more likely to grab the hearts of people to make them feel more emotionally involved, as no one should ever harm children, especially babies. This is also related to the concept of unsubstantiated claims bias that occurs when journalists make claims that are not backed up by evidence. The journalist had claimed that she had witnessed some of those scenes with my own eyes as they were walking through this community that may be a quarter of a mile from the Gaza border. Even though the IDF themselves could not find any evidence to back up this allegation, it is still used by Zionists to justify their actions or arguments, including the continuous bombing of areas within Gaza. This shows the power media bias has and how deceptive it can truly be. How can media bias even be proved? A study conducted by the Human Rights Watch reviewed 1,050 case studies from Instagram, 1,049 of which involved peaceful content in support of Palestine, which was censored or suppressed by Meta, and this is not for the first time. Back in May 2021, people faced a very heavy censorship when they started speaking out about Israeli authorities' decisions to take over Palestinian homes in the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood. 30 human rights and digital rights organizations denounced social media companies for systemically silencing users, protesting and documenting the eviction of Palestinian families from their homes. The Human Rights Watch published a report that documented Facebook's censorship of the discussion of rights issues and warned that Meta was silencing many people arbitrarily without explanation, replicating online some of the same power imbalances and rights abuses that we see on the ground. Facebook acknowledged several issues surrounding the content but boiled it down mainly to technical glitches and human error. This is not the first time Facebook has utilized their biases against Palestinians or Muslims. Back in October, when tensions were arising on social media, users had noticed when they had the word Alhamdulillah in their Instagram bio, which translates to Praise be to God, Meta had a glitch, according to them, where it would translate the word to terrorist, a derogatory term that is constantly used against Muslims. Although Facebook fixed their mistakes, it highlights the media bias that exists on social media platforms and how ingrained and normalized it is within our society. Also, Palestinian American Faraz Hamad is currently battling Meta in a lawsuit about discrimination after the company apparently fired him for fixing bugs that caused the suppression of Palestinian related posts. One might ask, how does misinformation circle around in the first place if the media is here to provide facts? Well, due to the increase of traffic online and the more people online, it means that there's an increase in the amount of reach fake news can have. The more people online, the more likely fake news can circulate. This term is coined as information epidemic, which refers to a series of physical and psychological reactions formed by the public when they are faced with misinformation, because it is difficult to identify the veracity of the information, and the spread of misinformation infiltrates into everyone's life. Social media can be described as something like an echo chamber, where people come together looking for information, and when misinformation comes into play, it's echoed throughout the platforms and spreads everywhere, which can lead it to being used in mainstream news reports and papers. Studies show that misinformation actually spreads way faster than facts online, as misinformation is more likely to elicit emotions such as fear, surprise, and disgust. So, why has the media allowed for such misinformation to be spread online? Why not fact check before posting? Well, there's a lot of reasons as to why this can happen, such as wanting to be the first to publish a huge story, gain more clicks, more attention, and bias. Arguably, Islamophobia is one of the reasons why misinformation has been allowed to spread so much during these past 8 9 months. A quick search on the internet will show that Western media aren't always the most positive about Muslims or Islam and can often use divisive or provocative language to portray them. Many media outlets have portrayed this ordeal as something that is happening between Muslims and Jewish people, almost like a war of religion, you could say, completely ignoring the huge Christian population that exists in Palestine, as well as ignoring the Christian Zionists. By depicting this as a war on religion, it begins to elicit Islamophobic discourse, as the language the media uses can be entirely dehumanizing, leading to an increase in hate crimes against Muslims. The United Kingdom Anti-Islamophobia organization has stated that there had been a 7 times increase in reports of Islamophobia since October 7th. In the US, the Council on American Islamic Relations said that it had received a 172% increase based on the year before in the amount of complaints since October 7th. Islamophobia in the media has been very evident post 9/11, where the media attempt to strike fear into the hearts of the public as a response to global terrorism. However, they seem to be generalizing all Muslims as a result of the actions of a few extremists, and this has been very, very clear in the media against Palestine. Since 9/11, political scientists conducted a study looking at over 20,000 news and media about Muslims and found out that about 60% of the news depicted Muslims in a negative light, painting them as aggressors. So, this is why it is so important to pay attention to the language of dehumanization used by the media. A study conducted about the BBC's bias towards Palestine examined articles published between October 7th to December 2nd. The word murdered was used 101 times when referring to Israelis, but only used once for Palestinians, whilst the word died was used 82 times for Israelis and 201 times for Palestinians. From this, we can infer that they are trying to minimize the Palestinian suffering and makes it seem like they just happen to die. There are more examples, such as describing young people as children in Israel, but in Palestine they are referred to as people under 18. Israeli civilians, Palestinians collateral damage. Israelis have hostages, Palestinians are prisoners. Israel has attacks, but Palestine just has explosions. By using language like this, it can lead to people dehumanizing these groups themselves, pushing feelings of disgust and contempt. Take a look at this video here.
It looks like accidentally a stray bullet found its way into the van ahead, and that killed a 3 or 4 year old young lady. So tragic events in the West Bank.
Here you just saw a 3-year-old girl who was killed by Israel being referred to as a young lady rather than a child or a baby. By using divisive language like this, it can create some emotional distance from the event, which can desensitize the audience to the subject's suffering or humanity, making it easier to ignore or justify mistreatment. Also, by using dehumanizing language, it can lead to establish a moral justification for the punitive treatment of these groups, where Palestinians are characterized as inhumane or other, so their suffering has become alienated and segregates them from everyone else. Language of dehumanization can be traced back to colonialism, where European colonial expansion was justified and explained as a way to spread civilization. And the media often depicted non Europeans as barbaric or savages. This enabled a sense of morality in which colonialism was seen as saving these people from their barbarism, and these same tactics have been used by the media against the bombings of Iran, Afghanistan, and now Palestine too. How do we combat media bias? Well, one of the main ways we can do this is media literacy. This is a method of dissecting media content in order to critically analyze it. And to do this, it is essential to look at the media's content's underlying messages, its ownership and regulation, as well as how it's being presented. Being media literate allows us to see what is true or not and understand the underlying or subconscious messages the media is trying to give us and grants the media less control over our views. We live in a digital age. Media literacy has literally never been more important than it is now. When we're fed a piece of news online, for example, on TikTok or Instagram, a lot of people are most likely to believe it right away without even questioning it. But it is important to build resilience against these tactics the media use. By being media literate, we push against propaganda and biased reporting and foster a more informed and discerning public. Take a look at these headlines here. Can you see any differences between them? Pause the video and think about it.
Miss Jackson.
The headlines on the left relate to framing theory, portraying an act in a way where it leaves room for a second guessing or without all the information, to leave readers confused or feeling as if certain actions can be justifiable or unjustifiable. Instead of using active language like the ones on the right, it is subconsciously guiding audiences to make moral judgments, pushing the audience into a decision where they have no control over it. By using active language, it emphasizes the facts of the news events rather than the perspective or the interpretation of the journalist, which ensures that headlines accurately reflects the contents of the news story and that people are not being deceived by it. It also makes it clear who is responsible for the action by avoiding ambiguity or confusion, leaving little room for media bias to come into play. According to researcher Baran, there are 7 main media literacy skills, but don't worry, guys, I'm not gonna bore you with them all. But there are some important things to remember, and these are having an understanding of and respect for the power of media messages. This means understanding who the content is available for and not to dismiss stereotypes being used against marginalized groups, because when we ignore these stereotypes, it can actually hurt them more, which is why it is important to stand up for them. Another skill that is important is the ability to distinguish emotional from reasoned actions when responding to content and acting accordingly. Sometimes we connect with certain media because it evokes an emotional reaction that we relate to. I mean, we're only human, we all do it. But we have to make sure that the content may not be true. So it is important to keep that in mind when analyzing media messages. And I'll leave you guys with this last one here, is having the knowledge of internal language of various media and the ability to understand its effects. This comes down to understanding how media is produced, and we have to pay attention to the smaller details of what they are trying to convey. As we deepen our relationship with digital media, we have to make sure we deepen our media literacy skills. I mean, guys, come on. This is literally what English class has prepared us for. It has given us the skills to evaluate news articles and headlines, to understand subliminal messages.
It's yeah, it's yeah. I don't even know what to say.
But I know it's a hard thing, and we all have to try and do better to make sure we understand it more. So, I hope this video on the Palestinian genocide has enlightened you on media bias from a sociological point of view and how we can overcome these biases and critically think for ourselves. If you like this video, please like and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. And if there's anything you want me to talk about more, or if any of my points are unclear, please don't hesitate to leave any questions or comments on any of my social media. Thank you, and remember, we cannot change what we are not aware of, and once we are aware, we cannot help but change. Thank you.